Welcome to the Scottsdale Planning Commission public meeting. The city encourages your interest and participation in the public hearing process. The Planning Commission is an advisory board to the City Council on land use and zoning matters. The meeting agenda items are development applications that require public hearings. The Planning Commission considers the request and makes a recommendation for approval or denial to the City Council. The City Council makes the final decision for or against approval of the application. The agenda consists of the roll call, minute approvals of the prior meeting. Continuances are for items that will not be heard tonight. Withdrawals are for items that have been withdrawn from any further consideration. Consent agenda is for items not likely to require a presentation or discussion. All items on the consent agenda may be voted on together. Any commissioner may move any item from the consent agenda to the regular agenda. Regular agenda is where each item includes a presentation and recommendation by staff, a presentation by the applicant, and public testimony. After, the applicant will have the opportunity to respond to the public testimony. Excuse me. The Planning Commission then discusses the case and votes. Non-action is for items for discussion. No vote will be made by the Planning Commission. Citizens wishing to speak on any agenda item may fill out a blue speaker card, or if not willing to speak, may fill out a yellow comment card and turn it in at the staff table before the agenda item is to be discussed. The chair will call you by name when it is your turn to speak. When called, come to the podium, state your name and address, and then begin speaking. Groups wishing to speak should elect a spokesperson to represent the views of the group. To facilitate the meeting, your comment will be limited to 3 minutes for individual speakers, 1 additional minute for each additional individual present at the meeting who has contributed their time to a representative speaker, up to 10 minutes. Please format your speech to be accommodated within the applicable time frame given. For convenience and timing presentations, a lighting system is installed on the podium. The light will be green for 2 minutes and yellow for 1. Please conclude your comments when the red light appears. Thank you for your interest in time, and now we'll begin with the meeting roll call.
Chair Higgs.
Present.
Vice Chair Young.
Here.
Commissioner Gonzalez.
Present.
Commissioner Kaminsky.
Present.
Commissioner Ertel.
Here.
Commissioner Scarborough.
Here.
Commissioner Serena. Commissioner Serena, are you online? Okay. I believe he's online, so no.
If you're still looking for Commissioner Serena, I'm here. The phone kept putting me into mute, so I apologize.
Okay, thank you, all present.
Thank you. Moving on to public comment. We do have 2 requests to speak on agenda items 4. So we will wait until that agenda item comes up to hear those public comments. I don't believe we have any call-in requests. Okay, great. So we just have the 2 in person. With that, we will move on to the administrative report.
Thank you, Chair Higgs, Commissioners. Greg Bloomberg sitting in for Tim Curtis, who's on vacation. Thank you for being here. I don't have anything new to report on tonight's agenda. I just want to remind the Commission that we will be meeting on October 26th. There's a couple of big cases on that agenda: the Optima mixed-use project at the southeast corner of Scottsdale and the 101, and Scottsdale and Gold Dust at basically at 70th Street and Gold Dust. Those are a pair of zoning cases that have drawn some interest, so that'll be a good hearing with some good discussion. And that concludes my administrative report.
Thank you. Could you please restate that date again for that hearing?
That's October 26th.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Excuse me. I guess we'll move on now to, unless there are any questions. Okay. Thank you. Moving on to the approval of the minutes from the last meeting. I'll go ahead and ask for approval for the notes from the regular meeting minutes from September 28th.
Chair Higgs. I'll move to approve the September 28th, 2022 regular meeting minutes as written.
Thank you. So a motion from Vice Chair Young and a second
I second it.
from Commissioner Gonzalez. Roll call vote, please.
Chair Higgs,
Yes.
Vice Chair Young,
Yes.
Commissioner Gonzalez,
Yes.
Commissioner Kaminsky,
Yes.
Commissioner Ertel,
yes,
Commissioner Scarborough,
Yes.
Commissioner Serena.
Yes.
Motion carries 7-0. Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on to action items, beginning with the consent agenda. We don't have any recusals for consent agenda items, which are 2, 3, and 4. However, Commissioner Gonzalez has asked that we move some 2 and 4 to the consent agenda. Commissioner Gonzalez, are there any questions of staff or the applicant that can be asked without the need to move, in particular, agenda item number 2, because I know number 4 we have speakers, so it would be good to hear that presentation, but
I would like to go ahead and just,
move it.
we can bring the speakers up front if you'd like to.
So still move it to regular meeting?
Yes,
Okay.
please.
Okay. All right, so with that, can I ask for a motion for the approval of consent agenda item number 3?
Chair Higgs, I will move to make a recommendation to City Council for approval of case 7AB 2022 per the staff recommended stipulations after determining that the abandonments are consistent and conform with the adopted general plan.
Okay, we have a motion from Vice Chair Young. And a second? Did I hear something?
yeah, second from Scarborough.
And a second from Commissioner Scarborough. Can we please get a roll call vote?
Chair Higgs,
Yes.
Vice Chair Young,
Yes.
Commissioner Gonzalez,
Yes.
Commissioner Kaminsky,
Yes.
Commissioner Ertel,
Yes,
Commissioner Scarborough,
yes,
Commissioner Serena.
Yes.
Motion carries 7-0. Thank you.
Thank you. So now we will move on to the regular agenda, which are the 2 items that we've moved from consent agenda. We do not have any other regular agenda items that were initially stated on the regular agenda for this evening. So starting with item number 2, case 9AB 2021, Cochise Lot number 1 and 2 abandonment.
Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair, Commissioners. My name is Katie Postler, and I am here to cover for Jeff Barnes, who's also on vacation, to cover 9AB 2021, which is the Cochise Lot 1 and 2 abandonment. The site is located south of East Cochise Drive in between North 124th Street and North 128th Street, and is surrounded by other single-family properties. Here's a closer look at the site. It was actually recently divided into 2 properties, so there will be a house on each lot. The zoning on the site is R1 43 ESL, which stands for Single Family Residential and Environmentally Sensitive Lands. The request in front of you today is by the owner to abandon the 33-foot wide GLO roadway easement along the east and western boundary and the south 13 feet of the 33-foot wide GLO easement along the northern boundary. Graphically, that's depicted here. So we have the GLO easement along the western boundary, that's 33 feet, 13 feet of the northern GLO easement, which is 33 feet total, where we need 20 feet of right-of-way, so that's why there's 13 feet left over on that north side. And then on the east side is the 33-foot GLO. And staff supports this abandonment because those roadway easements are not needed and there's not a street planned to be there. There are conditions of this GLO abandonment. The first is that the applicant dedicate 5.1 feet of a water facilities easement. And this is because on the east side, to the east, there's a neighbor who has a water line. So this easement is to cover the width of that water line for maintenance purposes. So they've provided a legal and graphic for that. And then the second condition is payment to the city for compensation, which will be determined at City Council. that concludes staff presentation, and the applicant is also here.
Thank you. Before the applicant, if we do have the applicant come up to present as well, do you have any questions for city staff?
Yes, thank you, Katie. That was very good. Let me just ask you, basically, because the owner is reimbursing the city for fees, is that for fees or is it for land, or what is it really about?
Chair Higgs, Commissioner Gonzalez, so it's a state statute that they have to provide compensation for the GLO easement. It's typically 50 cents a square foot, so that's the purpose of that compensation.
Okay, thank you. And then, as you pointed out, most of the easements were already granted.
Yes, so the GLOs were typically granted in the 1950s and 60s before access was laid out for the area. So they were along all the boundaries of a site before the roads were decided where they were going to go.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Commissioner Gonzalez, you would still like to hear the applicant speak? Or
No, that's not necessary.
Satisfied?
Katie
Oh.
was very prompt in her answers and everything, and she really resolved everything
Oh, okay.
for me as far as I'm looking at.
Okay, fantastic. And we don't have, let's see, I should ask, are there any other questions from commissioners maybe on the phone?
No.
No.
Not Commissioner Serena, no.
I think that was a no. Okay. Okay, great, thank you. We don't have any public comment on this particular agenda item, so with that, if I could ask for a motion for item number 2.
Chair Higgs, I'll make a motion, or I'll move to make a recommendation to City Council for approval of case 9AB 2021 per the staff recommended stipulations, based upon the finding that the abandonment is consistent and conforms with the adopted general plan.
Okay, we have a motion from Vice Chair Young and a second.
Second, Ertel.
And a second from Commissioner Ertel. Roll call vote, please.
Chair Higgs,
Yes.
Vice Chair Young,
Yes.
Commissioner Gonzalez,
Yes,
Commissioner Kaminsky,
Yes.
Commissioner Ertel,
Yes.
Commissioner Scarborough,
Yes.
Commissioner Serena.
Yes.
Motion carries 7-0. Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on to our last agenda item, which is agenda item number 4, 2ZN 2022, NEC McDowell Road and Hayden Road. Is this Mr. Casey Stenke? Okay, fantastic.
Thank you, Chair Higgs, Vice Chair Young, and Commissioners. Casey Stenke, Planner, City of Scottsdale, here to present case 2ZN 2022, the northeast corner of McDowell and Hayden Roads. You can see the general site location here again, northeast Hayden and McDowell. And a little closer, you can see the specific intersection at McDowell and Almeria. The existing site conditions you can see is being used as a parking lot for the associated office development to the west, though it was always intended with the original zoning to be used as a separate pad site standalone building. The existing zoning is Planned Neighborhood Center PNC. To the east, we have SR and C2, both commercial districts, and then beyond that, we have single-family residential. The proposed zoning will remain PNC, the only difference being the reintroduction of drive-through restaurant as an allowed use, which we see in the ordinance for PNC, but was stricken out with the previous zoning case at this site. The general plan designates this area as mixed-use neighborhoods, and we are in the southern Scottsdale character area. For a brief history on this, the previous zoning case was in 1984, with subsequent development soon after that. Some of the issues that were addressed at those public hearings included concerns from neighbors about buffering from the office portion of the development to those parcels to the east and northeast. That was resolved with landscaping and parking acting as that buffer. Additionally, there were some traffic concerns beyond the general concerns we tend to hear from any new development. In specific with this case, there were neighbors that were concerned about people using Almeria Drive to bypass the intersection of McDowell and Hayden, and that was, those issues were ameliorated to the satisfaction of City Council by abandoning a portion of Almeria, which would arguably have incentivized that that shortcut. And then finally, and most importantly for this particular adjustment, they did stipulate that no drive-through financial institutions or restaurants would be allowed on this particular site where they are typically allowed in the PNC zoning. With respect to the outreach, staff and the applicant did their respective efforts. Staff did its typical requirement for on-site signs, newspaper ads, postcards, and our online fact sheet. And the applicant held an open house meeting, and their citizen outreach report indicates that they have done subsequent individual meetings with neighbors, HOAs, and other interested parties. Here you can see the preliminary potential future site plan to the, I don't have a mouse. To the west, there is that office building. To the north of that, on the same parcel, there is an existing, though it's going through a modification, restaurant. And then you can see to the southeast where it says Pad A is the subject site with a potential future drive-through establishment. And the action requested for the commission today is a recommendation to City Council for an application for a zoning district map amendment and to amend the development plan and zoning stipulations to reintroduce drive-through restaurant as an allowed use on this PNC site. That concludes staff's presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions. We also have Justin from Upward Architects and Michelle Hammond from Barry Rydell if you have questions for them.
Great, thank you. Commissioner Gonzalez, did you have a question for staff?
Not at this time.
Okay.
But I would like to be able to call them back in after
Oh, sure.
the other discussion.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any other questions for staff before we move to the applicant?
No, thank you.
I was waiting to see if anyone was on the call that wanted to, but okay, we're set. Then let's move on to the applicant, please.
Are you requesting a presentation?
A presentation, yeah, I believe so. Mm-hmm.
Good evening. My name is Justin Grigonis with Upward Architects. We're the architect on this project. We don't have a whole lot more to add to staff's presentation. I do know there were a few questions, comments that have arisen that we might be able to clear up. I know there's a few lots on this overall development that I believe we will be doing a lot combination on to clean up that, which I think was a concern of one of the commissioners. Another concern I think of some residents in the area was I think it's a current issue, and that is the times at which trash is picked up, because I think it's probably being done really early and it's a noise issue. So ownership is working with they're trying to work with to find the right company that will work with them on pickup times to alleviate that. I mean, it's an ongoing issue, so they're currently working on that issue. So we would like to try to get that resolved as well. And then I think there was a comment about type of use. You know, although we're targeting certain types of users, you know, we'd love to have a coffee shop here. We can't commit to that, you know, at this time. I will say that this site is not set up for McDonald's, a Burger King, you know, any of those bigger fast food users. I mean, the building footprint we're showing is 1,800 square feet, and it's going to be a smaller, you know, kind of pick up, you know, maybe some token seating inside, but it will be a small user. So that's what I can add for that. So.
Thank you. One quick point of clarification. When you mentioned the trash pickup is an ongoing issue, so the existing buildings there, there's been some challenges with the time frame that it comes.
Correct. We're reworking the trash enclosure that would be associated with the building to comply with current City of Scottsdale ordinance, but we're not adding any more trash to the site, so it's already being picked up currently. So I think that's the issue, is that there's currently, you know, it's probably getting picked up too early right now.
Okay.
So.
Okay. Thank you. Commissioner Gonzalez?
Is traffic here this evening, or anybody that can address the traffic?
Commissioner, we do not have someone from our traffic department, but we're happy to attempt to answer your questions the best we can.
Well, I just had a question as far as what they've if anything new has come down as far as the drive-through capabilities of the area. Because obviously traffic was of concern at one particular point in time. I just didn't know if there was a recent traffic study and how the drive-through might impact the area.
Chair Higgs, Commissioner Gonzalez, the Transportation Department did have a variety of comments as we went through the review process. However, they have not identified anything substantive enough such that it would require a traffic study. There were some adjustments made by the applicant team in terms of closing off superfluous drive access and having proper queuing length and widths, but in terms of the generation of traffic, I don't believe our transportation team identified anything of concern that we're aware of.
Yeah, this site does kind of clean up two driveways that are would not currently be allowed because they're too close to each other, so it is eliminating one drive entrance into that center. So it should help with some traffic conflicts.
Yeah, correct me if I'm wrong. I think what you were saying, Mr. Stanky, is that the concern that had been raised was more of the cutting through the corner, using that to cut through versus an increase or influx in traffic in that corner. Does that sound right?
Chair Higgs, that's accurate.
Thank you.
I guess maybe what I didn't do was I didn't see that on the plan, how that was brought forward. That's fine. You've answered my question, sir. I might ask Mr. Stenke that, can you pull up that one rendering that you have again, that floor plan of the area, or not a floor plan, but the basically plan? I'd like to look at that, those driveways and stuff again, if you may. So basically, you're saying that the traffic flow is not going to be increased or have any impact to the area?
Commissioner Gonzalez, I can't sit here and guarantee that a new development would ultimately not generate any new traffic. Nor can I specify the intimate details of what our transportation analysis involves, but their indication to us was that this would not rise to the level that would require a more substantive analysis or level of concern.
Okay, well, thank you, sir. I appreciate your time. I think maybe I'd like to hear from anybody that has something to speak on the subject.
Yeah, for sure. Before we move to the public comment, though, any other questions from commissioners, maybe on the phone?
Nothing from Kaminsky, thank you.
Any others? Okay. Well, with that, I will move on to the public comment. The first request to speak is Ms. Susan Armanis. If you could please state your name and address, and as a reminder, you have 3 minutes.
Hello, I'm Susan Armanovs. I live at 1614 North 81st Street. My property is right along Alameda. It directly is across the parking lot from this development. I'd like to first comment on the opportunity that I was given to obtain information and discuss the impact. This morning I pulled the Planning Commission report online and found the following statement under the community involvement. In quotes, the applicant sent out letters to property owners within 800 feet of the site, held a virtual open house meeting, and hosted various small groups, one-on-one meetings, phone calls, and house visits. Once the application was filed, the city also sent out notice to the property owners within 750 feet of the site. No comments have been received as of this writing of this report. I was notified of this proposal and I attended the virtual open house, stating my concerns, which should have been recorded. I received no notice of various small group, one-on-one meetings, phone calls, and house visits. As cited, given concerns I expressed during the initial virtual open house, I am disappointed in how this is progressing. However, moving on, I hope the board will consider my concerns today. I'd like to say the pictures of the property, the renovation or the elevations, they look nice, and the developer seems thoughtful in the proposed green space. But the proposal is ambiguous. There's no real firm plan that's being presented. What is this? It was first presented as a small morning hour drive-through coffee shop. Now it's grown to 2,400 square feet, large restaurant pad, with no clear intention on its use. A small morning hours coffee shop is a much different neighbor than a nearly 2,500 square foot restaurant with drive-through services. Problem areas of concern as a direct neighbor are heat, light, noise, and landscape. For heat, the number of idling cars in the long, stacked drive-through line is of concern. Lighting was not much of a factor during our morning time coffee shop, but a restaurant will present nighttime light issues. Cars in the drive-through queue will shine directly into my backyard with no mitigation. Noise. Again, a morning hours coffee shop presented very few noise issues, mainly garbage pickup during the wee hours. A full restaurant will have significant noise issues day and night, more garbage, delivery trucks with reefers, late night cleaning after closing, cars driving through up to closing time. And landscape, although much of the proposal shows nice areas of landscaping, what's the actual landscape plan? Will there be mature shade trees? Will the plan be maintained if the trees don't survive for various reasons, such as storm drainage?
Ms. Armanos, I'm sorry to cut you off. You have exceeded the 3-minute time limit. If you could just sum it up, if you don't mind. Thank you.
Please consider these concerns as real to quality of life as a neighbor on the east side of this development.
Thank you. Appreciate your time. With that, we'll move to the second speaker, Mr. George Armanos.
Howdy. I'm George Armanoffs, 1614 North 81st. Planned Neighborhood Center, PNC, is supposed to be encouraging residential uses to provide a live-work atmosphere and daytime, nighttime activities. We're first told that it was going to be a small drive-through coffee shop. Now it's 2,400 square foot drive-through restaurant, probably a fast food of some type, McDonald's or something. It's pretty large. We got a moving target here. Basically, we have a situation where the drive-through restaurant is a change in the use of the property. And wouldn't it require a zoning change so we get a big picture of what exactly is going on here instead of having some kind of moving target that, well, it's going to be this or that? That's my comment. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Armanos. I appreciate the comment. Are there follow-up questions from commissioners? Commissioner Gonzalez? Or should I guess I should give the applicant a chance to respond first. Excuse me. If they choose to.
Thank you for your feedback. The building is shown as 2,400 square feet on there, but that is not a large fast food type use. A McDonald's is over 4,000 square feet. Burger King's 3,800 square feet. So it's still going to be in the lines of like a Black Rock Coffee, which there's one up on, Thomas Road, just north of there. It'd be something similar to that. Again, that is what we have targeted. So, but there's, in the development world, it could be like a salad and go type place, or, it's going to be a smaller use just because it can't fit a big fast food restaurant on that pad. So, hopefully that helps with some of that. I'm not aware of the notices or whatever, but to my knowledge, there were notices sent and meetings held. So, hopefully we've try to accommodate everybody.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Gonzalez, did you want to follow up with a question?
Thank you. Do you have any renderings of what you were thinking of particular on this project, or anything of a traffic flow or anything like that? Because obviously you're going to have to change something to make it work, and I just would like to be more specific if we could.
What do you mean? Renderings, so this will have an opportunity to go before DRB. You know, right now we're just...
No, just how it's going to impact that area, basically how it's going to impact that parking lot. I guess the site is actually the parking lot. Am I correct on that?
Yeah, so if you want to go back to the site plan blow up, I don't know, do I have the ability to do that, or?
While you're pulling that up, if I might just clarify, what I think one of the concern, I could be wrong, but correct me if I'm wrong, Commissioner Gonzalez, is without knowing especially where the drive-through would be and where the cars would enter, that could be an impact of the traffic flow. So if you at least know that, is that a fair assumption, Commissioner Gonzalez?
Sure. I mean, that'd be fine. But also, you know, it's following the land use, which I understand. You know, that's basically what we're looking at. We also have to be more, you know, for a neighborhood impact like this, it needs to be a little bit more specified as far as the particular details. At least that's, you know, the feeling that I've gotten, or actually the feedback that I've received publicly. So that's why I wanted to look at this and maybe get a better idea and let everybody else see that if they can, and see if this might help everybody just kind of imagine what this is going to be like.
Yeah, and you know, we do have I mean, we're trying to make this more of a neighborhood location. I mean, something that people can walk to and utilize in the neighborhood, or, you know, grab a cup of coffee or whatever it is on the way to work. So the flow, you would come in here, come into the main parking lot, and then enter the drive-through, and you queue around, and the pickup window would be on the east side. There is also full screening around that drive-through lane with screen walls, so there should be no light from headlights shining into any properties, because they would only point north. We have substantial amount of landscape at the corner there to also help with that buffer, and that drive-through would have a full canopy, you know, over the drive-through to help reduce the look of the drive-through. You know, we're not trying to create just a plop down, you know, cheap little project here. I mean, I think this is something that we see as, you know, an amenity to the neighborhood. So, you know, that's at least the types of users that the owner is targeting.
So the ingress and egress of the particular project will be the same opening?
Well, it'll be the same drive. You know, you come in on that, what street is that? Almeda or Armida? Can't read it on that screen. So you come in on that, but you could come in off of Hayden as well and circulate through the site. You know, obviously you have to kind of circulate through the site, but yeah, and there is another restaurant user over on the Hayden side, that little building on the north side.
Yes.
You know, that's been a number of restaurants, you know, again, as an amenity to the neighborhood. You know, this is just kind of a fill-in for what was always planned to be, you know, some sort of probably restaurant use. And in today's climate, obviously things have changed since 1984, and, you know, people go through the drive-through and pick things up versus, you know, sitting down, and, you know, COVID's kind of changed that a lot.
Right.
But
I understand. That area, I went and actually revisited that area. I was quite used to I go to Lowe's a lot down the street from there. So I always in there. That particular project, the way the massing is done on that project a long time ago is something that probably wouldn't be built today. It's, you know, it's not stepped back, it's right on the sidewalk, and it's, you know, massed pretty big. So it's kind of difficult, and, you know, the other restaurant on the other side has had a pretty tough time of it's gone through a transition of many restaurants over the years. So what I'm trying to guess is seeing, that it's going to work with the rest of the neighborhood and make sure that it's going to be, bring some sort of quality of life to the area, because unfortunately, there's not much else there going on for the neighborhood.
Yeah.
And you just try to, you try to revisit these projects when you have a chance to, and, try to make it a little bit more work with the neighbors. So I appreciate your time, and thank you.
You're welcome.
I have a follow-up question to that. I guess, I don't know if it's for Mr., probably more so for staff, Mr. Bloomberg, or perhaps Mr. Stanky. It sounds like, so this, we will vote on this today, yet it will still go back through DRB. But we won't have the chance to see it again. It's just kind of, it's hard to make a decision on something that's ambiguous at this point, especially because if you have I'm just throwing this out there, Starbucks coffee, and the line, it's the lineup of the drive-through I'm mostly concerned with, right? Or a smaller coffee shop, there might be 3 or 4 cars if it's the drive-through part, right? But without knowing that, it's really, I feel like it's hard to make an informed decision, and also per the speakers that we've had volunteer to speak today, saying that as a moving target, that addresses a little bit of a concern too with some of the changes of how this has evolved. So I guess my question is, once it gets to DRB, then it'll move on to council, or what's the next step after that, if it's approved?
Chair Higgs and Commissioners, if you make a recommendation of approval tonight, it will go to council for final approval, and then there will be a DRB hearing for the building itself and all the details, site design, landscaping, and so on. But it will not come back to Planning Commission.
Okay. Maybe it's just me. It just seems weird to try to envision what this will look like when it could be one thing or another, which would impact the flow of cars with the drive-through in that tight corner. So I struggle with that a little bit. I'm taking up too much time. Questions from commissioners on the call?
Yes, this is Commissioner Kaminsky. I share your concern regarding the ambiguity. There's the issue of use, which is what's before us tonight, and there's the issue of design. And some of the factors can be addressed through design, such as lighting that was brought up earlier. But without knowing the tenant behavior on restaurants, the hours that they operate, whether or not they pick up the trash that gets left around their property, how many signs they put out. There's reference to another drive-through on that same side that is not an asset to the area in its current condition. So the ambiguity of the use does concern me, and I'm wondering if there's any willingness to, rather than eliminate the condition that's already on this property, modify the condition, because the condition now restricts the use for not allowing restaurant or financial services to have drive-throughs. So they could have a dry cleaner or other drive-through uses that were not part of that prohibited use list. Maybe there could be a modification to the condition rather than eliminating it, which adds to the ambiguity, and limiting the hours of any tenant so that it would be, say, 6 a.m. to 5 p.m., which would alleviate the lighting concerns, the nighttime use concerns as a compromise, without having to address the design issues, which we can't.
Thank you, Commissioner Kaminsky. Any other commissioners with a question or comment on the call? Oh, Vice Chair Young.
Thanks, Chair Higgs. To the speakers that voiced some concerns, I know that those are valid concerns. The city's got an excellent staff that works with the Development Review Board, who is very good at what they do also, and I think that all of your questions will be answered at that DRB process. You're very aware of the project now, so I think you can track this pretty closely and work with staff and work with the DRB members individually or as a group to get some of your concerns addressed. So I think tonight we need to kind of also just take into perspective what we are voting on, and it's basically the modifications to these stipulations and the use. you know, I know I was on the DRB for 6 years, and I know it's easy to get down into the weeds on some of these details, but all those things are going to be worked out, and your voice will be heard at that, you know, at that appropriate time. So, you know, I don't necessarily have an issue with the use. I think the property is still going to function essentially as it does now as far as access. You know, with traffic, you know, I'm not sure what kind of traffic volumes are coming out of there from the existing office building and those tenants. But, you know, I imagine there will be some increased traffic because this will be an added use there. But I think, you know, the way that they've cleaned this up and restricted that access into there, I think that's a benefit. So anyway, that was just a couple of comments that I had. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other follow-up questions or comments for from commissioners?
Chair Higgs,
Yes.
this is Commissioner Scarborough.
Commissioner
Just wanted to echo Vice Chair Young's position on this case. I am supportive for what the Planning Commission is to review, and I believe also that through the DRB process, the citizens' concerns will be addressed.
Thank you. Any other comments?
Yeah, Chair Higgs, this is Christian
Yes.
Serena. Yeah, could staff just reiterate both for the commission and for those in attendance, you know, the site plan that we have before us, it looks like, if I'm correct, that there's only one stall, maybe for a parking stall for ADA, and the use itself is not being set up for much more than, you know, just maybe one or two cars to park in front because the focus is going to be a drive-through. Is that correct?
Chair Higgs, Commissioner Serena, if I hear you correctly, I believe that is correct. There is one on-site accessible space, and there will be requisite agreements with the adjacent parcel to tie in that parking so they can reach the ordinance requirement. But yes, if your question was what's on site for this pad, it's that one stall.
Okay, and from our previous experience, I mean, projects like this, are they square footage wise, are these things that are, you know, like the applicant said, you know, call it a salad and go or a small coffee shop? This is generally too small for larger operating restaurants, or maybe there's a lot of inside dining, correct?
Commissioner Serena, I can't personally speak to that, but that is the contention of the applicant team, yes.
And can the applicant team just review, they mentioned something about protecting or the massing or screening they would be providing in the drive that would help mitigate any kind of light that would be coming through into the neighbors, which seems like one of the major concerns of the neighbors?
Sorry, do you mind repeating your question?
Yeah, you had made a comment about some of the screening, I believe, that was going to happen with inside or around the drive that would help mitigate some of the light. I know that a couple of the speakers, or the speaker from the neighborhood, had some concerns about the light off of the cars in queue, and it sounded like maybe you had already had some sort of screening element for that.
Yeah, so there is going to be a screen wall completely wrapping around the drive-through to mitigate any headlight traffic, and then with that kind of full canopy over the drive-through window, that should also help minimize any light output from that. The entry is most likely going to be on the north or west corner of the building. Again, this is a very small site, so it is going to be a smaller footprint type building, and you know, the drive-through only functions really in this layout, so that, you know, any sort of light from the inside is probably going to be shining mostly west. But yeah, I mean, we would, you know, we can minimize exterior lighting to, you know, the minimum extent for safety and, you know, things like that. But yeah, we would be happy to, you know, I'm sure during the process we'll be asked to do a photometric study to make sure we're complying, you know, with light, you know, at property lines and things like that. So we can definitely study that as it moves along. And to kind of
Well, I would,
go back to the parking question, there will be a cross-parking agreement with the overall center. Again, you know, we do see this as kind of a potential for the office users to walk to, for residents to walk to. It is a small footprint, and we don't, you know, we're not going to see a lot of sit-down traffic at this location.
understood. Okay, well, yeah, I think I would be in support of it. I would just like to make sure that we're, and I think it's already been clear, but that the file or notes would include that council, but probably more so DRB, have a continued conversation, maybe about adding some additional trees that might make the neighbors feel that the light would be a little more mitigated. But I think as a site plan and the way it's laid out, I don't have any objection to that. So, you know, from a planning commission standpoint or site plan, I feel comfortable with it. It would just be a recommendation for DRB to take a look at, you know, the lighting and some of the trees that are screening the neighborhood, which is obviously what they would do anyway. So.
Thank you, Commissioner Serena. Just so I understand, there were two different square footages that were mentioned, 1,800, then 2,400, and then I think the applicant said that, yes, the image showed 2,400. Which is it? So we can have it on a microphone. Mr. Steinke, is it 2,400 then?
Chair Higgs, correct, 2,400.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions or comments from commissioners? Commissioner Gonzalez.
Yes, Mr. Steinke, one thing I had a question is, does this conform for as far as the parking ratio that we have for the total complex? When they take this space out of usage, will the parking be affected?
Chair Higgs, Commissioner Gonzalez, there will be additional required parking. The site is and will continue to be overparked.
Very good, thank you.
Okay, thank you. If there are no other comments or questions, may I ask for a motion?
Chair Higgs?
Yes.
I'm trying to find the case. Sorry. I would move to make a recommendation to City Council for approval of case 2ZN 2022 per the staff recommended stipulations. And after determining that the proposed zoning district map amendment is consistent and conforms with the adopted general plan.
Okay, we have a motion from Vice Chair Young. A second?
Second, Scarborough.
And a second from Commissioner Scarborough. Roll call vote, please.
Chair Higgs,
I'm going to trust the process and say yes.
Vice Chair Young,
Yes.
Commissioner Gonzalez,
And I again reiterate also, trusting in the process and hoping that DR looks at this pretty heavily, I vote yes.
Commissioner Kaminsky,
No.
Commissioner Ertel,
Yes.
Commissioner Scarborough,
Yes.
Commissioner Serena.
Yes.
Motion carries 6-1. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you for everyone for the time in discussing this. And I appreciate especially the community members that came to speak and have been actively engaged in the project thus far. And I highly encourage you to stay engaged and involved and continue to speak and work with staff and the applicant as much as possible. We do appreciate your time and efforts. With that, I don't believe there's anything else. If there's any other final comments or questions from staff or commissioners, otherwise, if I can get a motion for adjournment.
I move to adjourn.
Motion for Vice Chair Young. Second.
Second it.
Second from Commissioner Gonzalez. All in favor? Aye. Motion passes. We adjourn. Thank you. Good evening.